There's been no shortage of controversy and debate recently about the issues with the Escape from Tarkov flea market. I couldn't help but notice that the vast majority of the discussions and complaints that I hear within the community were based on misconceptions and misunderstandings, and I want to shed some light on what I believe to be the actual problem here. If you think the problem with the flea market is bots, scripts, or macros, I would love it if you could watch this video to the end and give me a chance to convince you that you might be focusing on the wrong things. Give me a chance to suss out my theories and explain my perspective and consider what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. Now, for those in the comment section that are literally already criticizing the video before listening, I need to get out of the way right now that I'm not denying that there are bots, scripts, and macros on the market and that they are or have been a problem. I'm not denying it. Nikita doesn't deny it. Don't waste your time saying that I'm ignoring the problem. Grab some hot cocoa, some popcorn, and relax for a minute. Let me explain why these issues are simply a distraction from the problem that's the heart of the issue. An issue that, luckily for us, is potentially easier for Battlestate to address. Now, this video is going to have three major sections. In the first section, I'm going to explain the perception around the issue and what I believe that real cause is. Second, I'm going to propose changes that will hopefully go a long way to remedying the issues that we discussed. And lastly, I'm going to propose a few simple user experience changes that I think could drastically improve the quality of life for both buyers and sellers on the market in the future. Now, what you're seeing right now is an example of an experience that I think most of us can relate to. As you can see, it can be pretty difficult or sometimes downright impossible to buy the cheapest item when that item is a high turnover or high demand item, such as rare quest items, labs key cards, things you need for your hideout, etc. Now, whenever this experience happens on a live stream, which is pretty common these days, chat invariably fills up with complaints about bots and macros being the primary cause of what we all just witnessed. Now, if you're one of those people that has this gut reaction when you or someone you're watching experiences issues buying things on the flea market, let me explain how you're missing the bigger issue at hand. As much as I'd love to dive into the details of, what a REST API is and how they're designed, that discussion's for another day. But what I can do is visualize a simplified but still accurate representation of how they work to give you an understanding of what's going on under the hood of the flea market system. Now, in a nutshell, there's two types of entities involved here. There's the Battlestate servers and there's the Tarkov game clients. When the client, in this case the game running on your PC, wants data from the server, it sends a request to the server specifying exactly what it wants. The server validates and processes this request, and then returns either the requested information or some sort of status or error indicating exactly what went wrong. Now, requests can take anywhere from milliseconds to minutes depending on a multitude of factors. The client or person's game PC's internet connection, speed, status, their internet service provider's network, the traffic it's currently experiencing, the geographical distance between the client and the nearest server, and, like physics, the speed of light, stuff like that. So due to some of the factors I just mentioned, the time that it takes for each unique client to send and receive data to and from the server can vary widely. Even different requests from the same client on the same day will have noticeable differences in latency, simply due to the massive number of relevant factors involved. So why am I talking about this? Simple. This very fact, coupled with the current design of the flea market UI and how the UI is structured around buying and selling items, is the actual core of the issue. It's not bots or scripts. Let me explain. One of the items that people complain about the most these days are the labs entry keycards. Now, we all know that the limited trader availability of these cards, their general rarity, and the profit potential that you can have when you go into labs are all what leads to them being in high demand. So because of this demand and the fact that many players simply don't enjoy it but find the cards anyway, the turnover is high, and they are often sold for below market value because it guarantees an instant sale for many players for an item that was obtained often without any actual cost included, like spawning in as a player scav with one in your pocket, which surprisingly enough is more common than you think these days. So why is it impossible to buy one of these sweet deals we all see pop up? Isn't that just the bots or the scripts? Well, maybe, but it actually doesn't matter. Why? Well, that all comes down to how the flea market works. When your client requests a list of items for sale from the server responds with a snapshot representing the relevant flea market sales at that exact moment in time. Now, in order to show the information that we currently see, all of the data representing each sale is going to need to include things like the seller's name, their reputation, but it's also going to need to include a timestamp representing when the sale is available. Now, these timestamps are generally Unix timestamps, which represent the number of seconds since an agreed upon standard date and time. In most cases, midnight on January 1st, 1970. Now, this is an efficient and convenient standard to represent universal time in software independent of time zones. Now, the noteworthy thing here is that each individual client is responsible for presenting the market sale information, but they can only interpret this based on the information that they have available at the time. In this case, the notable piece of information is their own system clock. Now, if you know anything about the way system clocks work in PCs, you'll know just how unreliable they can be. Now, OnePeg recently did a video on this topic, which I had some criticisms of that we discussed in his comment section as well as in private, but in a nutshell, the TLDR was basically that you can fuck around with your system clock such that it is as close to as possible synchronized with the server clock, which will make buying and selling from the flea market more reliable, which he argued was a partial solution to the problem that we experience with all of the flea market bots until they are dealt with. So I have two things to say about this. Firstly, I completely disagree with anybody that calls what he discussed in the video a cheat or an exploit. Doing this is not lying or misleading the servers, it's not taking advantage or exploiting bugs in the system, it's simply an attempt to overcome the technological limitations of time synchronization between different devices that have different clocks. So in the end, the client can represent the server state as accurately as possible. Now, that's actually just the normal desired state of any client-server relationship. It just so happens that by default, there's not a whole lot that this client-server system in Tarkov does to ensure that this is the case. Now, secondly, this doesn't really do anything to address the problem, which I'll discuss again here shortly. All this does is act as a sort of fragile and clumsy attempt at overcoming a single hurdle in a system with countless more hurdles. Now, just for shits and giggles, check this out for yourself. Go to the website time.is. I just discovered this while researching this video, and I'm actually blown away by the results. Looking at my personal development laptop, a MacBook Pro, my streaming PC, and my gaming PC, my laptop is pretty much spot on with the kind of general agreed upon epic time. My gaming PC, which is what I play Tarkov on, is actually over 2 seconds behind, and my stream PC was somehow almost 6.5 minutes behind. Now, all of these are set to have their respective operating systems set the time automatically. I've never messed around with the system time on any personal non-development advice until today, so I'm not really sure what the deal is here. I do know that there are issues of natural drift of, seconds, milliseconds over time as months, days, weeks go by, but this was really surprising to me. So, with this in mind, if two clients are told that a sale will become available at 15750466639, and client number one's system time is currently 15750466635, and client number two's system is 15750466633, client number one will show a countdown timer 2 seconds ahead of client number two. So this means that the purchase button will be available for client number one 2 seconds before client number two will have the button be available for them. So out of curiosity, I polled the users in my Discord to get a random sampling of how far off their gaming PC's time was, and the responses ranged from being a few seconds ahead to some being minutes behind, with the average at around 3 seconds behind. So think about it this way. In order to win this purchase, think about all the different steps that are involved here. The sale becomes available for purchase on the server. The sale then becomes available for purchase on your screen. You need to react, click purchase, and then press Y or click yes to confirm. The request is then sent from your PC out to the network, traveling as fast as it can given the hardware and the traffic that exists at the time. Then the request reaches the server and it determines if you've won the sale. So now that we have sort of a rough timeline for the major points in the purchase process in full, let's take a look at an example with a few different combinations of variables and see how this could go down in theory. So in this theoretical example, we have 4 people competing for a single item. Now, from the perspective of the server, the only entity that really matters in this case, at t equals 0, the start of this experiment, the item becomes available for purchase, which is represented by the green dot. Person number 1 has a poorly synced system clock, about 3 seconds behind the server. Persons 2, 3, and 4 have less of a sync delay, but number 3 has the worst of them. So the red dot on the timeline represents the moment when the countdown timer hits 0 and the respective purchase buttons become available on their screen. Now the yellow dots represent the time it takes for each person to react to the sale becoming available. Now your brain needs to identify and react to the button becoming available, send the signal, down your arm to your hand and your finger to click the mouse, which then needs to go to your gaming PC's system, back to the actual game client itself. Due to the differences between, gamers and their reaction time, coupled with how this is affected by the system, their hardware, their graphics cards, the refresh rates of the monitors, you can actually check out Linus Tech Tips' recent video that actually included Shroud on this. We know that the delay in reaction time here is going to be in the ballpark of about 400 to 500 milliseconds, but this can vary quite a bit, obviously. Now, person number 1 and 4 have an average reaction time about 400 to 500 milliseconds. Person number 2 has a below average reaction time, nearly a whole second. And person number 3, well, they're not actually a person. In this case, they're a script running on a machine that has been scheduled to click at the precise moment that they believe the item to be available. So finally, the pink dots represent the amount of time it takes for each respective client to formulate and send the request to the server. The request, which is sent from your machine through the local network, routed through your ISP's network all the way to the servers, could potentially be hundreds of miles away, and then the server receives it and determines if the item is still available at that exact moment in time. This can be on the order of milliseconds to multiple seconds or more. So, why did I draw this out? What can we learn from this diagram? Hopefully this has made it a little bit more clear that there's way more at play here than simple reaction time versus bots or scripts. Now, while bots or scripts might be able to buy themselves hundreds of milliseconds in the process, they don't always have full control over the entire request pipeline, their system clocks, whatever, so they're not guaranteed to win. Now, what's worse, it isn't just 4 clients competing for the same item. No. I discussed this topic a few times, most recently with Nikita a couple days ago, and he told me that at the time he checked, there was 20,000 users actively on the flea market alone, not just playing the game, but actively using the flea market at any given time. So think about that for a second. Let's just say 1% of those people on the flea market were looking at keycards, which honestly I think is probably pretty generous, but let's just use 1% as a case here. That's 200 people, all effectively staring at the same listing with 200 unique system clock values that we know can be behind by seconds or more, all waiting for that fraction of a second moment when they have the ability to press the purchase button and then confirm their purchase with the dialogue. So what does this mean? Well, macros and bots are only able to automate a single step in the process. They can effectively eliminate that fraction of a second delay it takes for the average human to notice the button is available to click and to click it. But if you look at all the other factors, even if this was a perfect world where Battlestate could prevent any bots or macros or scripts from purchasing items, unless their PC was located literally in Battlestate's server room, they'd still have to contend with the issue of system times and internet latency, so they really can't get much of a benefit out of it. Even if every single client was perfectly in sync, a scripter or a bot with an average internet connection speed located 100 miles from the closest server would still theoretically be out-purchased by a human being with an average reaction time if they have good internet and they were located closer to the server. So, in a nutshell, there's really not much of a level playing field when it comes to competing for items, and even if there was, you're practically playing the lottery. In some Tarkovian utopia where everybody had the same reaction times, internet speeds, and system clocks, you'd still effectively have less than a 1% chance in this case to buy the cheapest item on the market when there's 200 people also trying to buy it at the same time. So what's worse here is that the other 198 other people that lost the sale along with you, they're all going to start the process all over again on the next item in the list, making their way down, failing every single time. Piling onto the problem here, when you fail to purchase something and you dismiss the error dialog, the list does not refresh. So any items that you try to buy after this might have already been sold multiple seconds ago. If you try to buy the second item, it was probably gone 2 seconds ago. Then you have to get the error that pops up there, dismiss that one, and you try to click on the third item, but it was sold 5 seconds ago. It goes on forever. It's all of these things that add up to, in my opinion, what is 99% of why the community is so butthurt about bots on the flea market. It all comes down to a subpar implementation of the flea market purchase system with a lacking user experience coupled with the collective ignorance of the technologies involved and desire to blame anyone but the actual cause of the problem. So, honestly, with the current system, I can't think of any way to remedy this issue. Syncing the system clocks of every client and server simply is not going to happen. But as discussed, this isn't really a technological issue. It's a feature, design, and user experience issue. In order to fix the problem, the flea market needs to allow for fair competition between buyers and sellers without the need for millisecond precision. Put more succinctly, the core of the issue is that there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of people in the market at any given time, all attempting to purchase the same individual few items from a list of sales that's almost definitely out of date for a large percentage of the items. And even though there's plenty of stock available at nearly the same price and they're practically an infinite supply constantly coming in all day long, everybody is always fighting over the same handful of items. So, with that being said, what can we do to remedy this problem? There's countless different ways that we could decouple purchases and sales from the Unix timestamp hell that it currently lives in. They could implement things like buy orders, some sort of queuing system, maybe even hide the countdown timer for sales that are upcoming in the next 60 seconds so that people all aren't trying to wait for the new thing when there's plenty of stock available, and I'm sure a million other things that I haven't thought of yet. The idea that I have that's currently my favorite is admittedly based on two of my personal opinions and assumptions here, which I'm going to ask you all to consider now. Number one, when buying fairly expensive items that you usually buy in quantities of 3 or less, like quest items, keys, key cards, etc., are the differences in price, on the order of 1 to 10,000 rubles really significant to you? Would you potentially pay a little bit more to not have to deal with the frequent inability to purchase items? Number two, in the vast majority of sales, ignoring ones that you want to, do trades with streamers or friends or whatever, do you actually care about the name or the reputation of the person that you're buying the item from? Now, personally, I don't care who I'm buying the item from, what their reputation is, and I don't care about a handful of rubles when I'm buying even fairly inexpensive items. So with that in mind, I'd much prefer it if I had the ability to collapse all of these items down into increments of, let's say, 10,000 rubles. Now, in the case of keycards, it would actually collapse 100 individual sales for nearly the same price down into a single row. Clicking purchase would purchase the cheapest item available within that range, and it would be the first one that was available at that range. Now, this drastically increases the chances of me getting the item that I want at a reasonable price. The priority of the items that it would choose from the list, assuming that they had the same sale price, would be ones that were put up first, which is actually much better than it is now, because right now most of the people are buying the newest things, even if they're the same price, so that even things that are the same price that were posted before end up stale at the bottom of the list and not purchased. All this does is it incentivizes undercutting sales by a single ruble or more, which honestly is kind of tedious and annoying for buyers and as a seller. Honestly, as a seller, I would actually prefer to have like a drop-down box. Let me choose between 190, 195, 200, 205, 210, or whatever. There's no reason why there needs to be 1,000 items for sale that are all identical, that have 1,000 unique price points, simply taking advantage of sort of a shitty UI. In my opinion, it could be drastically improved by doing a little bit of limiting around the prices that you could set on items. So again, these are just a couple of ideas that I'm spitballing here to try to show you guys that the issue here can be solved creatively, not by getting out your torches and pitchforks and trying to get rid of all the bots and macros and scripts, because even if you do that, nothing will change at the end of the day. Even if Battlestate spends thousands and thousands of man hours with a bunch of engineers that could be working on really cool features, adding captchas in so that we all have to enter in fucking captchas when we go and buy stuff, and getting rid of all the bots and banning them all. At the end of the day, nothing is going to change for the end result for the user. We're still going to struggle to buy the things that pop up. And what's worse is that a large swath of the community is going to think that Battlestate is lying about them fixing it, because how else could this happen if it wasn't for bots and scripts and macros? All right, so on to an adjacent topic here. Some UX improvements that I think could really make the quality of life when using the flea market drastically better with some minor changes. So this first one isn't really super important and it might be controversial, but I for one think that they should just get rid of the player-to-player barter trades, because honestly all they do is poach on new players who don't understand the value of the items that they have, because the game does not properly understand the value of the items that they have. The average sale price for things like bolts and screws and whatever is in the UI drastically undersold, when it might be orders of magnitude more expensive if the user wanted to take those items and put them up on the flea market. So these are basically the new versions of the priority sales that people used to just try to scam folks by making it something that would sell for 10,000 rubles be $10,000. And honestly, most of the time they're just scams and they're not good deals, and they should just get rid of them in my opinion. But like I said, I'm not going to necessarily advocate that this is something that they should do. Another thing would be, if I want to sell an item from my stash, let me right click and let one of the options be sell on flea market. This would save me having to right click on an item and click filter by item and then hit add offer and then scroll down to find the item that I clicked on originally just to right click on it again. It's just too much of a pain in the ass. Just let me click on the thing and say sell. Now, what it should do is it should pop up a dialogue, and that dialogue should give you a few pieces of information. One, it should tell you what the maximum price that you can sell that item to right now to a trader. So let's say it was a Bitcoin, it would tell you that Therapist would give you, X rubles for the Bitcoin. Now, along that information, it should also tell me what the average price was for the last, say, 10, 15, 20 sales that occurred for that item. So now I'm able to compare, is it worth it for me to keep? Is it worth it for me to sell to a trader? Or is it worth it for me to put up on the flea market? I'm not going to get confused by whatever the average estimated price is for the item, which for the most part has historically been wrong. The minimum and maximum are effectively irrelevant at this point. All that I really want to know is, what are they selling for right now? And what can I sell it for to a trader? For any player to get a good snapshot in time of what they have in terms of value in the item that they're investigating. Another pet peeve of mine has to do with the different currencies in the game, and there's a bunch of things they could do to improve this, but I would love it if I could show all of the prices in my desired currency. So what that means is, if I have rubles that I want to spend on something, don't show me only the things that people put up for rubles, show me everything for sale. And if that item happens to be for sale for a certain US dollar value, there's only one exchange rate, and that's how much you can buy dollars for rubles from Peacekeeper. So just do the conversion for me and let me buy it. If I don't have the dollars, let me buy it for rubles and just do the conversion under the covers and charge me rubles. It's really not complicated, and having the different currencies and having to leave the different menus and convert back and forth and then do the math yourself, it's a pain in the ass. It doesn't add anything to the actual value or the immersion of the game. It's just annoying. And it would be fantastic if they could do this, because it would also improve the preset system. When I go to buy something, I hate to have to pull up the preset system with the UI that has the issues that it does now, just to find out that I'm $30 and €7 short of the thing that I want to buy. I have to leave the menu, go exchange the rubles over, come back, and then try to get into the same menu again now that the options have changed, because the filters are all based off of the flea market, if that's how you set it up. So overall, just do the exchange rates for me, please. And my final idea that I have would be great for a lot of people, whether they were just buddies playing the game or streamers who want to do fun meme runs or whatever, but it would be great if you could just send your items to friends. Just let me put something in the mail, even if it came an hour later, or even if I had to pay a small fee to transfer it over. Let me just send items to my friends. It'd be a nice quality of life improvement. Maybe even put it on a cooldown so that, people can't cheese it or whatever. You don't have to worry about all sorts of accounts that are just passing items back and forth and back and forth. If I could do 1 or 2 an hour or something, I don't know what it would be, but it would be really cool. It'd be fun, and it would allow people to very easily and with no risk share gear with other people so that they can use it, have fun with it, experiment with it, do testing and stuff. I see no reason why that's not something that they should add into the game. So overall, that's my whole thesis on what the issue is with the flea market. It's how bots and scripts and macros suck, but they're not really the problem. And even if we got rid of them, it wouldn't solve anything. And how some interesting and thoughtful UX and product design could make it so that the issue of the bots could essentially go away, or it would, there would be some other issue that they would have to tackle, because you're never going to get rid of that stuff. But it would really only result in an improved, more enjoyable experience for everybody, and less of the headaches and bullshit and drama and infighting and all of that stuff that goes on when these sorts of controversial things hit the community. So I hope that you guys found this interesting. You learned something. Maybe you got to see this issue from a different perspective. If you have any other ideas for how they could do this in the UI, or anything else that's kind of outside the box, let me know. If you have any criticisms or anything that you think I might have gotten wrong here, feel free to let me know as well. I'm always open to discussions about that kind of thing. But I wish you guys the best of luck out there. I can't wait to see what they do in the future, and happy hunting out there. All right, fam? We'll see you later.